Okay, so we've just had a discussion about brickwork. I'd like to also have a brief discussion about concrete blocks. Now, we've discussed in class that perhaps an appropriate material to use for the basement car park is concrete blocks. And what we should be doing then is considering what is the best wall heights for that garage basement wall if we're going to use concrete blocks. But if we're smart about it, we will also fit it to a standard brick rod dimension so that if we later change our mind and decide to build it as brick, then we can without having to adjust our design too much. So that means that we should be working with the concrete blocks with reference to the brick rod. Now, the first thing to do is to determine, well, what is the dimensions of a concrete block? Now, these vary from concrete block to concrete block depending on your manufacturer. But your typical concrete block dimension is going to be, I'm just going to look up my standard concrete block dimensions. So you might need to write this down because I haven't got the exact graphic here which shows you the height in millimeters, and so write these down. But generally a typical height of a concrete block is going to be 190. Okay, the typical length of a concrete block is going to be 390, and the typical width of the concrete block is going to be 190. Now, you may see that the heights, the width and the length might be 200 for the height, and then 400 for the length, and then 200 for the width. But they are probably quoting to you the upper tolerance, including the mortar joining, okay? Now, if we consider what our typical brick rod heights, and I mentioned this very briefly in video E, which was the first video for the brick rod, is that a very typical dimension for floor to floor when dealing with brick buildings, cavity brick or double brick or brick veneer, is 2914. Now, 2914 is great because it allows you to have your typical rough setup, which is 3 meter from floor to floor, but then take into account that, of course, your floor slabs are going to have a thickness to them as well, depending on what the engineer is going to determine as the suitable floor slab depth based on the loading. Now, if we've got a rough dimension to work with in relation to the brick rod, which is 2914, then what we could consider very comfortably is that we make the basement brick, concrete brick coursing to be 2400 high, and then take a very standard brick rod dimension of 415, which represents, I think, 6 courses of brick, to finish the remainder. And what I'll do is I'll show you a screenshot of what I've drawn on the board so that you can really start to get an idea of where I'm going with all this discussion of 2914 and so forth. So just bear with me for a second. But what I'll do is I'll just mention that this then, it is the 6 courses of brick, would be 514 plus the 2400, which is a very comfortable dimension for your concrete blocks, will add up to 2914, okay? In the next video, I'll just show you a quick screenshot of what I've drawn up on the whiteboard to show you sort of a diagram of how these stories are going to be eventually set up, and that will help to clarify the last 2 tutorials that I've posted up, okay?